there is some sense of desperation that pushes that, and also some sense of like, well, I can't just sit around and die. Like, I've got to move forward, even though this is like my world around me has crashed, right? So, yeah, just trying to challenge myself to hold space for the people who are being super judgmental and saying, well, at least you'll still have each other. Yes, and this is really devastating. And that is my experience, right? Life is so beautiful and it is so horrendously difficult at the same time. And you can have feelings and experiences of both those things at the same time.
Welcome to Amy Liz Harrison's podcast, Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy, a Gen Xer who overcame her struggle with alcohol to become a best-selling author and mental health advocate. She shares stories of hope and offers ideas for others struggling with mental health challenges. One thing is for sure, you'll leave with something to chew on. And now, here's your host, Amy Liz Harrison.
Welcome back to Eternally Amy. Greetings, compadres. All right. Listen, this is really off. I think they say off the cuff. Is that the saying that they say, or that they did say and probably don't say anymore? And it's a better term these days than off the cuff. I'll have to check that out and look it up on the interwebs and see what it actually means. But anyway, I have not thought this through, nor have I even sketched out a little outline, nothing. I'm looking at myself right now in the reflection of this laptop, and it looks like I have some crazy hairs going on. And that's because I haven't brushed my hair today. No, I haven't. So if you are watching this, you're welcome. Because my hair looks amazing unbrushed. JK. But I did brush my teeth. Winning at life, what can I say? But you know, the reason I have just chosen to jump on and record is because life is just lifey right now. It's just heavy. There's just a lot of stuff going on. And I'm going to try and make some amount of sense in talking this through, but really, I'm just processing. And so if this doesn't make any actual sense in a condensed way, which I'm sure it won't, then I apologize, but maybe you'll relate to it in some way. But by the time you listen to this, it will be far past the moment of today. And I bring that up because I think it's important for us to remember that, you know, this too shall pass. Things get different. Things get different and they change. And that's why a lot of times on this show and in my writings, I say emotion, right? The word emotion means that it's going to change. It's in motion. And so right now, so I was born in LA. I'm a California native. I lived in California for 25 years of my life before moving to the Seattle area. And so it's baked in there, you know, it's that state is just baked in there for me. And for better or for worse, you know, it's like you don't choose your hometown. And in these fires, without talking about anything political, because that I don't feel like that helps anything except to draw lines between people. I think that anyway is kind of small in comparison to the greater picture of what's going on. It's almost like all that stuff, that small-minded stuff, is it keeps us from seeing, it keeps me from seeing like the real issue, which to me is how we show up on this earth for each other and how we connect to each other. And the things that we experience, small trauma, little t trauma, as they call it, big T, capital T trauma, as they call it, all these different things. And the reason I bring this up is because I've been really disheartened at the way that, and I got to be careful with what I take in. Sidebar. I don't really watch the news as a general rule, but these fires, because it's my home birthplace and I lived in Pasadena area for 4.5 years, 5 years, really, as a college student. And I still have a lot of connections down there. And now, as a sober person, I have connections down there because I have friends on meetings who I've met and who I love. And I think it's been, of course, so difficult to watch the devastation going on, but almost even more than that, it has been devastating to watch other people who aren't there and who aren't going through this to judge and make comments about something that they have no experience with. And that's what I want to talk about today. To me, that is one of the most damaging things we can do to each other as human beings, is to judge someone else's experience when we're not going through it. And I know that we handle things differently. And we handle things differently because we have different pasts, right? We see things through the lens of our previous experiences and our childhoods, and whether we were raised with means or not, privilege or not, whether we felt loved or not, whether we were loved but didn't feel it in the way or receive it in the way we wanted to and that would make a difference or not. Like, we all just have stuff, right? We just have stuff, human stuff. And that's what connects us, right? And to hear people in conversation, and this is why I struggle. Like, I don't even sometimes want to go and deal with people anymore because, which I also know isn't healthy, okay? Don't come for me. But I just hate hearing people talk about something that they have no experience with, but they're going to just make blanket statements. And like, well, if it weren't for this happening, or if it wasn't this administration, or if it wasn't for this, and blah, 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 you know, we would have had X, Y, and Z. Well, like, none of that matters when your house burns down. Like, nobody, it matters, but it's not, people are going to think that on their own, in their own channel from their own corner of the world, right? And I think for the past week and a half, like as an empath, like this has been rough, right? Rough to watch people judge somebody else's crisis and nightmare. And specifically, I want to talk about seniors in high school. And the reason I want to talk about seniors in high school is because I had one in 2020 when the global pandemic happened. And she had been very much looking forward to all the milestones that she earned, right? Prom, high school graduation ceremony, etc., etc., etc. You know, it was really difficult for her to not have those things that she earned. Now, some kids were like, hey, no big deal. I didn't want to wear a stupid tie anyway, right? And that is totally fine. That's okay. But when somebody was really looking forward to those normal, expected achievements that they earned, and they don't get to have those, it leaves this feeling of complete and utter vacancy in that you just start to question everything in the cosmos, right? What is real? What is not real? Truth is relative. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. And this is the first time in my life so far. Now, keep in mind, I didn't live through World War I and II. There are lots of experiences that I've never had. Okay. For me, I've now at 48 realized, oh, like, tomorrow, the next day, there is nothing that is sure anymore. Even, aside from gravity, nothing is for sure. And even that may change, right? So to tell someone you shouldn't be upset about missing a high school graduation, it's just a thing. You have the rest of your life. It's one ceremony. Like, shame on you. Because did you have a high school graduation? Yeah, I thought so. And so that's why you are making a rash judgment for somebody else and saying, well, it's no big deal. Yeah, it's no big deal because you had one and you didn't like it, or you thought it was lame, or it wasn't meaningful to you. And that's fine. But for someone who hasn't experienced it, it's not fine. It's not okay that those things are taken away from those students without their permission, without their knowing that anything like that could ever happen. And so I bring that up because my other daughter was an 8th grader in 2020. And all right, she missed out on an 8th grade graduation ceremony. Arguably, possibly in the grand scheme of things, even for her, for that child who's a different child than my firstborn and has different desires, needs, wants, ways of looking at the world and its people. And she's just different, right? She's made up of a different makeup. It was unfortunate for her, but she was like, okay, well, hopefully this will be over by the time I'm a senior. And so it's a different experience for her completely than it was for my daughter who was a senior in 2020. But I bring her up because her class just graduated in June of 2024. Okay. And they had a high school graduation and they had a prom and they had all of those things that you could have argued, in eighth grade. Oh, you missed out on this, that, and the other thing, which they did. Now, follow me with this. The other people who were in my daughter's junior high school at the time, middle school, whatever you call it, in whatever region you're in, those kids were in seventh grade. And those kids are now seniors in high school. And those kids just had their homes burned down in many areas of LA County. Many of those kids had their high schools burned down. Many of those kids have younger siblings in the same boat, except it's elementary school. And they don't know what to make of that. So the seniors in high school currently who were in LA County, who don't have a high school right now, who were set to graduate in 2025, lived through this global pandemic in seventh grade, and now have lived, maybe physically, through these LA wildfires. And so what does that teach us if we're one of those seniors? Again, everybody's different, but for me, it would teach me, don't get attached to anyone, anywhere, at any time, because it can all be taken away in a second. And of course, there are all these other things like having expectations leads to premeditated resentments. Yeah, I mean, true. You know, we can't expect certain outcomes, but the trust that you put into the foundations and the infrastructures of building a child's life. This is how we run our lives. We get up in the morning and we do whatever we do to get ready for school. And then we go to school and we go to school so that we can learn. And we learn because it will afford us, first of all, just because that's what we do, right? Not in all, obviously, parts of the world, but we are lucky enough, many of us who are here, who have the ability to listen to a podcast. Many of us have a homeschool option or, an option to go to school. Sorry, my husband is upstairs and I can hear him. He's an Australian, but they're very, and I say that as a blanket statement only because, I think maybe it might just be his family, but a lot of them that I know say things like, everything's a huge exaggeration. So, you never have a headache, you have a splitting headache. You never have there's never a mess on the ground, there's a massive mess on the ground. Everything has adjectives and very extreme language. And I love that about him, but it's just funny. And so I could hear him upstairs. He's talking to my son, and I could hear him talking about some carpet incident or something. So anyway, back to this. As a parent, you just try and hold it together. And you just try and lead your child through life. You try and explain to your child that learning to read, learning to write, going to college, whatever it is, these things will unlock more choices for life, except when they don't. And except when the entire world gets turned upside down and then you're kind of left there as a parent or as the child actually experiencing this, or the young adult if it's a senior or high schooler. And you find yourself just going, well, what's the point? Because how do I even know the world will exist by the time I get to be an adult? So why do I need to conform to these things? Why do I need to be a part of a system that may be completely different by the time I get there? I even think of things like housing and how expensive the part of the country is that I live in and the part of the country where I grew up. I mean, those are two of the most expensive areas. I think they are the two most expensive areas in the entire country outside of Manhattan. And by the time our kids get to be our age, I'm Gen X, and in the Silicon Valley in the late 90s, I mean, getting a house was no, it was impossible. And we had some help from my parents to get into our first house. It was 300,000. No, it was 385. And it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. I'm going to call it a Rambler. I think that's what they call them. Built in the early 40s, I think, remodeled in the 60s. And it was tiny, and we were lucky to have it. But now, my kids are young adults, some of my kids are, and they're like, oh, yeah, hell no, there's no, we're not going to be able to afford a home, buy a house. Are you crazy? And, they're right. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And a lot of things have changed, including lifestyle preferences. And do you want to be tied to a mortgage that literally sucks you dry every month? But when I was younger, we had at least sort of this set way that things were kind of supposed to unfold, and a set sort of system to kind of unlock those levels of life that they didn't have very many variables in them. But nowadays, that's not true, right? Now it just feels like all the pathways are so unclear. It almost feels like someone took a junk drawer that had been organized with compartments, and the paper clips were in this little plastic bin, and then next to that were your pens, and then underneath that there was the little container where the screws go, and next to that there were some random buttons that came off of cardigans and whatever, but it was organized. And then someone just took that junk drawer and they just shook it up and eventually just dumped it upside down. And then they're like, hey, kids, here's your life. Enjoy. Figure it out. And these people are like, hey, I'm a kid. What? Aren't you supposed to show me how to do this? How this thing works called life? What to do on this spinning ball of mud called the world? Are you supposed to help me with that? And I think, what I saw during the pandemic and what I see now is people trying to oversimplify other people's trauma. And I hate that. And I think that, it's easy to just be the armchair expert when you have no life experience with what they're experiencing, especially because you're not in their body. You haven't experienced whatever they went through prior. And so, I want to say I'm not mad about it, but I'm kind of mad about it. I'm kind of mad about it also because I see a reflection of myself and how I was when I grew up in the church. And the church that I belonged to was all about certainty. You have to have a certain answer for everything. You have to, have an answer for the faith that you profess to when someone asks you and blah, blah, blah. And if you ever got to one of those questions that were unanswerable, right? Like, if you got to the end of your rope with God, does God really exist? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? Then the answer was always, well, it's on you. You need more faith. It's like, shoot. Yeah, it's my fault. And you know what that does is just build shame. And I have brought this up before on here, but what really changed for me one day was talking to somebody I know. His name is Mike, and he grew up with the same background as I did. And he said, Christianity, that's the religion I was raised in, is all about having the answers. And Buddhism is about being okay sitting in the questions. And so I've been on both sides. I have been that person who's been judgmental, who's been intolerant of people who are suffering. Like, well, God's in charge. And then I'm now, since 2011, have kind of morphed into this other newer spirituality for myself, which is like, hey, God, you're way bigger than the pigeonhole I tried to put you in and tried to have all the answers about. I have no idea what's happening. I have no idea who you are, what you're allowing, what is, I don't know. But I know that you've given me these other inhabitants of this planet to connect with and to love on and to support and to be there for, so that we can all say, there are times in life when this just hurts or this is just painful. And we're not going to pretend that we're not in pain and that we're not hurt. And we're not going to minimize somebody else's pain. We're not going to try and make sense of it. We're not going to try and sit here and come up with 10 answers that help us to reframe this. It's like sometimes we just have to hold space for the pain and let it pass. Will it ever pass fully and completely? Sometimes it does in some situations, and sometimes it doesn't. And we can't know or predict what that is going to be like. It will change. It will get different, but it might not totally heal. And it might be so wounding and so scarring that we just forever can't trust the process of life, because life just doesn't make sense anymore in the way that our brains can make sense of it. And so, I don't have answers. I just know that the one thing that helps me in times like this is love. And I'm also calling myself out because I have been mad at those people who are making rash judgments. And I know that I need to love them too because because I was like that prior to 2011, I get what it's like to be that judgmental person who's like, just slap some Jesus on this and call it good. What's wrong with you? You're still alive. You have each other or whatever. And sometimes I just feel like people need a chance to be in their pain and their heartache and their unknown factors in their own lives. None of us ask to go through circumstances that stretch us and grow us in ways that we never gave permission for. And so, no matter where we are on the path of life, just to realize that our humanity, the human experience, is both, it's a yes and, it's both unique and both universal. We might not all be able to understand what it feels like to have your entire house and all of your belongings and your whole neighborhood obliterated and decimated. But we may understand what it's like to feel like our lives are over. I felt that way when I got sober. I felt like I had no life remaining. I felt like drinking was the last house on the block. And now I felt like, well, hey, the rug has been ripped out from underneath my feet because now I don't even know how to deal with life anymore because I had adopted an escape route, which was drinking, and then that stopped working. And so, in my own way, in my own experience, I understand just a piece of those overarching feelings of like, what could possibly be next? How can I possibly go on from this point? And you could argue, well, that's, really a dumb comparison. And I'm not trying to compare it. I'm simply trying to point out the ways that I personally can empathize in my own corner of the world. It's not same. It's just a way of building a bridge to imagine even a fraction of what somebody else is going through. So, in wrapping this up, I just want to say I'm challenging myself today to hold space for those that piss me off in terms of making judgments about other people's experiences. Because I've been there too, and I've been that person. And it's not like, oh, I was that person, and now I'm just this amazing, Zen, woo-woo, woke person. And no, I'm just in a different space now than I was then. And, it's not linear. It's very much this ball of yarn, that's just kind of tangled up. And I'm more okay with being tangled up these days. I just am. I think when you weather a few things that are pretty massive in your own life and your own experience, then, you just kind of learn not to expect that life is going to just be like set it and forget it easy street. And plus, I know that I'll just keep getting opportunities to grow. Yuck. Right? But I speak both languages of being judgmental and being completely open-minded, like to the point where it's almost unrecognizable if I put myself back in those shoes of being a judgmental person. Be like, oh my God, what? Like, you're the kind of person I just thought was just going to hell and was totally out to lunch, right? Like, I mean, I have both in me now. I've done both, and I've been somewhere in between, and tomorrow, who knows what it will be. But for today, this is how I feel, and I feel strangely solid in it. You know, just like today, right now, those people experiencing insurance claims for their house that burned to the ground and trying to get a housing situation that's stable in LA, competing with hundreds of other families for one property to rent. It's like there is some sense of desperation that pushes that, and also some sense of like, well, I can't just sit around and die. Like, I've got to move forward, even though this is like my world around me has crashed, right? So, yeah, just trying to challenge myself to hold space for the people who are being super judgmental and saying, well, at least you'll still have each other. Yes, and this is really devastating. And that is my experience, right? Life is so beautiful and it is so horrendously difficult at the same time. And you can have feelings and experiences of both those things at the same time. That's where I'm at today. And you know, as always, anybody who's listening right now and then goes, well, that's not what you said 2 weeks ago when you were talking about reframing everything and da 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 da. It's like, you know, I do feel that way too. I feel like you can reframe a lot in life. And I also feel like there's a time to mourn. And I feel like there's a time to make sense of things if we can. And I feel like there's a time to, you know, lay in your bed and pull the covers up. And I feel like there's a time to be silly. And, you know, that's why, again, it's in motion. Because life is in session. And we need to just have love and compassion for each other, because this is just not easy. As always, take what you like and leave the rest behind. Don't forget to be kind and rewind. You know, stop and smell the flowers and take a breath and remember that you're loved, even if we don't feel it. All right, namaste.
Thank you so much for listening to Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy. Amy Liz Harrison is a best-selling author, speaker, 12-step coach, meditation teacher, and recovery advocate. To find out more, please visit amylizharrison.com. You can keep up with Amy on all platforms by following @AmyLizHarrison. Please subscribe and review this podcast. It means so much to us if you do.